Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we will talk about transport aircraft, Avro. The HS-748 Avro joined the inventory of Indian Air Force in early 60s, and the Indian Air Force now wants to replace the aging fleet of this transport aircraft. In fact, the efforts to find a replacement for Avro began around 6 years ago when Indian Air Force got the nod to procure 56 new transport aircrafts. Tenders were issued in 2012 and Airbus proposed to make C295 in partnership with Tatas. Airbus C295 is a new generation tactical airlifter in the light and medium segment. Now, the Avro story has a new twist with reports that Hindustan Aeronautical Limited has proposed an improved Avro with fresh engines and avionics that could extend their service for almost 2 decades. So what's the best way forward in the case of Avro, an upgrade or replacement, and how will it happen? For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests today. Let me start by introducing them to you, beginning with Air Commodore retired Prashant Dikshit, and defense expert with us. We also have Mr. Amit Cowshish, former financial advisor of acquisitions in the Ministry of Defense. And we have with us Air Vice Marshal P.K. Srivastava, and retired defense expert with us. Sir, let me begin with you, Air Commodore Dikshit. To try and understand for our viewers' sake, we call Avro as a transport aircraft. If you could shed more light on the Avro's journey with Indian Air Force and the reasons why it has been there, why it is being used, and why are we looking for a replacement now?
Very well. The Avro HS-748 was Air Vice Marshal Harjinder Singh's gift to India when he was commanding that unit in Kanpur. And in that particular era and times, and in the prevalent ethos, it was considered an enormous contribution to the transport operation scheme in India. I've read that book on AVM Harjinder Singh. And so therefore, when the first 2 aircraft were made in Kanpur, then the HAL took over the production and manufacture of the rest of the aircraft. But that, Vishal, was 1962. And why are we replicating history is what is enormously puzzling to me now. Because I tell you what, an Avro is a transport aircraft not capable of flying higher than 25,000 feet. That is the ceiling. And its capacity is only some 50 people. And it doesn't have ramp loading, which is the requirement for modern transport fleet. And also, even if we change the engines, how do we achieve better performance with that existing fuselage, which is as old? I believe Air Force has got some 56 aircraft. I read it on your screen there. So I think that will be an enormous waste of resources to replicate antiquity, if I may use the expression. I may be forgiven. The Indian Air Force has to move forward, has to look at different pastures, and I cannot escape a feeling that this is a tactic, because what you described is the Boeing and Tata joint venture that is happening, coming out all by itself. And in the Indian scheme of things, having only one identified thing is not accepted very easily. So I think HAL may have been encouraged to come up with this proposal, so they have a backup too.
Okay.
We have done away with the MTA, the Medium Transport Aircraft Program, which we were working with the Soviets and then the Russians, like we did for the 5th generation combat aircraft. All these changes are not explained very well in the open media. Maybe our colleagues today will have a better explanation for what happens. But I must honestly admit, going the Avro way is not the path which I will look forward to.
Okay, we'll come to that aspect as well. And since you have set the ball rolling in the first few minutes only, let me bring in Air Vice Marshal P.K. Srivastava as well on the other aspect of it. As Commodore Dikshit pointed out, that Avro has been with Indian Air Force since early 60s. And it is also being said that it has got a lot of life left, although, its usage is something which is being questioned, and its, tactical flexibility as well, as is being pointed out by Commodore Dikshit also. But what are the chances? How are we using it, and how can it be still use-worthy for us?
See, in today's modern Air Force, Of course, it is for the latest generation in the structure to comment upon it. We need two things to be very strong in our favor. One is our communications, that's what we call revolutionary military affairs. And second is our logistical ability. And that ability comes as a multi-role mission. There's nothing like it. Now, if you look at C295 and W we are talking about, because with the winglets is going to come, it has a tanker capacity. It can do second role. It can do, it can have an ESA radar which can go around. It can do that AVAC role. So it has many other roles inbuilt in it, which is not part of the HS748. And secondly, the structure which airframe we are talking about, the structure is of the old material. It does not have any composites in between. It is not modern. So naturally, the payload capacity would be as less. So these are the characteristics which are in the open domain. But there is another very philosophical point. The point is, why did we go for private sector? In the first place, to replace our old adage of giving it to HAL or nomination. The idea was, after so many decades, rather 75 years of journey, we do not have a defense aerospace industrial base in this country. And all our policies, whether it was strategic partnership policy or it was going for the Avro in the private sector and HL not to participate, was with this philosophy in mind. It was examined even during the previous government's time. Whether, because HL, as was pointed out by Air Commodore Dikshit, they jumped in and they said, why can't it be given to us? It was told, okay, this particular thing is a good startup point for the private sector to come in and do their bit and establish the ecosystem which we so badly need. We are actually being very, very import centric. That is known to everyone. So this being the part of the story, HL was given a go ahead, private sector was given a go ahead that, okay, you can go for this kind of joint venture.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for the competition's sake, only one single vendor situation
has,
arose, but that was also waived off. It was said we can still go ahead. So Air Force has gone through all trials and tribulations, and after that we have this stage, and at this point, if you come and bump in, I think it's being a bad boy.
Okay. Before we, again go back to Commodore Dikshit on the positives and the negatives of the HAL's offer, let me bring in Mr. Cowshish here. Mr. Cowshish, what do you make of the entire situation here, wherein a tender was floated 6 years ago? Now it's a single bidder situation. Tata, Airbus rather, along with Tata, is offering to give a C295. And now reports say that HAL is also proposing to go in for upgrade. So how do you assess the situation?
See, I find it very interesting that HAL should say what they are saying now, because when this proposal was being considered in the ministry, it was a conscious decision of the government to keep HAL out of it for the reasons which were just explained. That the government felt that there has to be a parallel capacity for manufacturing an aircraft in the private sector, and the Department of Defense Production was party to all the decisions. And if there's so much of life left with the Avros, and these can be upgraded and used for another 20 years, I wonder why at that point of time nobody said anything about it. That's one. Secondly, even if that is true, and it's a belated wisdom that has dawned upon HAL, the fact remains that changing the engine, as was just pointed out, is not going to serve the purpose, number one. Secondly, it's going to take time. Now, something that was required by the Indian Air Force 6 to 8 years back, actually this thing didn't start 6 years back, it started much earlier. Yeah. Because there were a lot of objections within the ministry, and two subcommittees were formed, one to interact with the industry. Industry said, yeah, we are very happy about it and we will participate in this. So there's a whole lot of work which went into it before the AON was given. So if the Avro replacement was necessary 6 years back, it can't be postponed indefinitely for HAL to come up with something new, which will also not be, which will not meet the requirement of the Indian Air Force. Having said that, even if they are in a position to do that, I am sure the requirement is so huge that both the platforms can coexist, because there are different functions which the platforms will perform. The Avro is not going to be able to perform all the functions which, what is this? the new one.
C295.
C295 is going to perform. So it's very sad that at this stage these issues are being raised. It should not have been raised, and if this is true that HAL can upgrade it, it can meet the Air Force's requirement and so on. This is something which should have been raised 8 years back, not today.
Okay, so it should have been said earlier maybe, and that is something which only HAL and those who are operating there would know. But if you come back to the previous issue, Commodore Dikshit, and something which you mentioned that replacing engines or replacing avionics might not do that much good to the Avro's airframe because it still has the old fuselage and the way it has been operating. It is also being said that Avro has mostly been used to transport men rather than material. So how much do you agree with Mr. Cowshish's argument here that both the platforms can coexist together if required? We can have C295 or maybe some other option if we have one, and maybe have an upgrade for Avro as well.
Yeah, but tongue in cheek, if I may say, if Mr. Cowshish would have been in the government, he would have said, why are you having both of them?
No, I can't answer that, but we don't have the time.
No. Mind you, I have a great respect to Mr. Cowshish, but I cannot resist taking a dig because eventually it means money. You'll have to spend money, firstly to upgrade the Avro with extra engines, probably strengthen the fuselage, but how will you provide a ramp loading? Ramp loading, AVM would justify, is a very essential requirement. So what you will use it only to carry your commanders from A to B and certain number of troops. Yes, you can give it to your paramilitaries. They need an aircraft to carry their thing from A to B, especially the BSF or maybe the CPIO organizations. They may benefit from this. But eventually it will boil down to counting monies. And secondly, how long will the HAL's program take place? Firstly, have they identified an engine? No. Have they identified the so-called glass cockpit? No. Have they identified the new weather radar? No. It could be easily said they can do it in a jiffy, but it doesn't work. And once you fit all this new stuff, there is a series testing program has to be gone through, especially a new engine. And that's a long time process. Contrarily, the C295 or any aircraft of jet genre would have been tested and brought in. It has gone through the process of airworthiness. But the new Avro, specifically said, will go through the motions again. I don't know. If the idea is to keep the industry going and the HAL going, I can understand. But then take a view.
Okay.
Whether you want A or you want B.
Okay.
If you can do with the HAL upgrading the Avro, then dispense with the Su-95. But both of them, I don't think any sensible minding institution will permit. And I'll use Mr. Cowshish's argument again to say, but it's a logical objection to take.
Okay.
Well, let me answer that question.
Yeah.
I mean, see, I didn't say that both should be used necessarily by the Indian Air Force.
If required.
And you answered this question yourself, that this aircraft, the Avro one, if it can be upgraded and used for another 20 years, it can be used for other purposes. Indian Air Force is not the only user of aircraft in this country.
In fact, there is an additional requirement of 6 more transport aircrafts given by the Coast Guard.
And not only that, if we are talking about money, then I am very glad that you raised this question of money. Do we have the money for buying the kind of stuff that we have in mind? So we are not talking about money. We are talking in general, in theory, about the possibility of both the aircraft being
utilizing the assets we have.
Not necessarily by the Indian Air Force.
Okay. AVM Shrivastava, on this aspect also, I understand you would want to add on to it as well. But, if we do a bit of a comparative analysis as well, the kind of platform we have, the kind of platform which is on offer, and the kind of platform which is there in the competition as well, in this category, in this segment, how do you look at all of them?
See, if we really look at the specifications of both the platforms, like we say that there is a residual airframe life, but that is the residual airframe life. And any airframe which is built today will have minimum 75 years of life, airframe life. So that's not the point in question. Point in question is what other technologies can come in which will make the aircraft multi-role specific. It's not possible to really make it multi-role the way we want it. The new Air Force wants it. The new Air Force is a different kind of Air Force. It's going to fly a different kind of aircraft, including the stealth aircraft the other day we were talking about. So with all those components coming in play, this is not the aircraft, definitely not the aircraft for the future Indian Air Force as we see it 2025 onwards, 2025 onwards. So this can be used elsewhere, that I am not here to debate, but yes, not for the Indian Air Force role as it is being envisaged for our future wars. Coming to other roles which it can perform definitely, which HA748 may not be in a position to perform. If you take the tanker's role, air-to-air refueling is going to become a very, very important thing for our reach. Because now we are talking about our reach, we are buying air-to-air refuelers. That is the reach of the thing. We need speed. We need now takeoff ability, the payload ability as better as it can be. In this segment, C295 is better than our Avro 748. And also in the current context, there is an obsolescence issue. I was myself the BRD commander for the MRO of this aircraft. The parts are not really available. If you talk of auxiliary gearbox, neither we can manufacture it economically here, nor it is available from anywhere. So there are huge issues in maintenance of this aircraft.
Okay.
It's not easily maintainable as of now. So when you bring in the new structure, we also bring in the new supply chain, which from wherever HL sources it will have to establish in a very defined manner.
Which will again compound the entire process.
So C295, I'll want to bring in another point which I think is relevant here since the point of money has been raised. See, there's not many examples where you can see that public sector and private sector, they competed together. But there's one example now today. It was for the Pichora upgrade. And you'll be shocked to know, in the competition when public sector and private sector competed, the L1 is 1/4 the cost of one of the CPSUs. So as far as the Air Force is concerned, it wants to spend its money wisely.
Okay.
It wants to buy from same 100 rupees as much as it can buy.
Okay.
So it is testing out, does that capacity exist if I keep nominating? So that's where the private sector came in.
So spending every penny you spend wisely
Yeah,
is the catchphrase here.
Okay.
Commodore Dikshit, one more thing before you respond to AVM Srivastava is the very fact which was brought in by AVM Srivastava in his earlier comments as well, and we all know that as Mr. Cowshish also pointed out that the this was an effort to bring in the private sector into this aerospace sector. So that's where this entire situation is also really important.
Very true. I think that is the tactic being used. But I dare say, AVM were talking about other utilities. The current Avro platforms are being used, some of which I am afraid I cannot speak in front of you. And some of them is possible to do. For example, we developed the AVAX and which we went to the Embraer because Embraer could fly higher and things like that, faster. But these utilities should have been thought concurrently. Secondly, Vishal, which we cannot escape in notion, why did we dispense away with the development of the medium transport aircraft? What were our problems? I find the whole process of evolution somewhat convoluted with no answers visible. I don't foresee a good future ahead for transport aircraft. Only redeeming aspect is, somewhere in the past, we chose to buy the C130Js and we bought the C-17 Globemaster, which were not a part of the larger scheme.
And let's not forget AN-32s we also have.
No, AN-32s are being talked of changeover with this new MTA program. AN-32s will not be able to serve you longer than another 5 to 10 years, I personally feel. AVM can throw light on that. So
at least in that much time frame, we can replace our Avros if at all we are trying to do it.
So we have to, we must.
But will that help? And that is a very loaded question. Does it meet your requirements? Or I think we have to face some very harsh realities and take a view that we cannot do it. Like you dispense with the FGFA, like you dispense with the MTA, you could perhaps dispense with the HL proposal also, if it doesn't show us a way in the long term.
Okay. Mr. Cowshish?
So there are a couple of things. First of all, HL proposal has nothing to do with the ongoing, negotiations. There was an RFP issued, there was a response which is being processed, the flight evaluations have been done, CNC I believe is on, and therefore the whole thing is poised for, conclusion, and I'll be very sad and surprised if the contract is not signed. Not only because it meets the Air Force's requirement, but a lot of other things which are being lost sight of. First of all, it's being forgotten that this is perhaps the deepest, the most truly make in India program. Why? Because the entire aircraft is going to be built in India by a 100% Indian company, right? Number two, all the assemblies, sub-assemblies, detailed parts, etc., are going to be made in India. The maintenance is going to be done in India. It has export potential. It can be modified and used for other purposes. And most importantly, it's a critical test of government's commitment to rope in private sector for the so-called Make in India in defense. Now, these are the spin-offs that we can't lose sight of. Apart from the fact that other people will try to pitch and queer the pitch, but the MOD has to steer clear of all this, because you can't say that while some proposal is going on, it's on the verge of being concluded. Somebody say no, I can do it, and therefore if that is accepted, then the whole thing will have to be retracted. The new SQRs will have to be formulated, and so on and so forth. And then you are looking at another 6 to 8 years.
And that's going to, take that much valuable time.
Absolutely. And by which time EN32s will also perhaps be on their way out. So what exactly is being thought of in the government circles, I don't know.
So it has to be a delicate balance between the timelines as well as the money we spent as well. AVM Srivastava, final word from you. What is the way forward you believe from here onwards as far as IAF's transport aircraft situation is concerned?
So now I tend to believe that probably HL's proposal is not in conflict with the ongoing negotiations for C295. If that is not so, then I think we are not debating anything which is substantial, because that's another proposal which can go on, because we are trying to make use of the residual life of an airframe which is existing, with whatever little money we spend on it or more money we spend on it, depending on the role we envisage for it. What the debate was that in case we are trying to pitch it against the upgrade versus the new acquisition, then there is a huge debate. In that context, my saying is that it may not be a great step that we go for upgrade and leave aside our such a philosophical thought, number one. Number two, I think it's government's credibility issue also, because we are really in the aerospace domain, we are turning too many things upside down. The Rafale was cancelled, a new thing came up, this also gets cancelled, something comes up. There'll be an international debate on our way of acquisition, whether we can acquire anything or not. That itself is a very important point which we have to keep in mind. Second thing, the old is old. It cannot meet the capabilities of the new. New is built with new technology in terms of airframe, in terms of its avionics, glass cockpit, in terms of role flexibility. You can move it for many, many roles, which were not then thought of, they were not then necessary. They were really not then necessary. And now the modern Air Force has to be a very flexible Air Force. It needs that kind of tonnage to move its men and material. And with the eastern borders now getting more attention from Indian Air Force, and the kind of threat perception we have currently within the Indian Air Force, and we want to respond to it, you need a very agile and very flexible logistics management system.
Okay.
Because logistics is going to cause you all the hurt. We had an exercise, Gagan Shakti, where we flew in a very short period, 11,000 plus sorties. These sorties demanded tremendous amount of logistical effort. Chief has gone on record saying on that. So that logistical effort cannot happen unless you have some very flexible, role-flexible aircraft available to you.
Okay.
So in that context, upgrade in no way pitches against the acquisition. I think they are in two different contexts. If they are in two different contexts, of course we are on the right track, then we have nothing to say. But if it pitches against each other, then acquisition, the way we are acquiring for Make in India, for establishing our defense aerospace industrial base, it is a good idea.
Okay.
Go that way.
Commodore Dikshit, final word from you.
Well, I think we ought to deliberate very strongly. What AVM has pointed out are very, very logical thinking processes. But are we going to be staggering each other on what we are achieving to do, or eventually do we have a game plan? I'll be honestly saying that we must have a game plan, and Mr. Cowshish will espouse the statement which I am making, that without a proper game plan, we are going to waste a lot of money, time and resources. and we don't have a sense of time, I'm very keen that we come to a more well-calculated conclusion as to what we want to do, and then only take those steps. A step here and a step there doesn't show us the way.
Okay, so clearly, as our panelists have pointed out, that we ought to have a clear game plan and the way to move forward to also ensure that there is optimum use of time, resources and money we have. Let's wait and watch as to what the final decision on Avro will be. We'll come back again next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.